Hey folks, welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk to you about The Fires of Vengeance, the second book in the Burning Saga by Evan Winter. And this is a much more political entry than the first one. The first one was a very action-packed Bildungsroman that was just entertaining as I'll get. This one kind of prepared the story to just go to that next level, to become that much more epic and grand in scope as such fertile ground is being laid in this setting with these people and and the history of this war and everything. So this book starts to fulfill that promise of becoming something greater than just a plain story of revenge. But anyway, what happens in this book? Tau, Queen Siora, and her allies have fled Palm City following the coup that has installed Queen Siora's sister as a puppet queen. Meanwhile, the Zidan people are preparing to finally invade and annihilate the Omehi once and for all. But if bereft of the resources or the capacity to retake Palm City in any way, shape, or form, Tal hatches a dangerous plan to that could easily result in catastrophe. But desperate times calls for desperate measures, and if they want to restore the queen, then if they want to restore the queen and prevent an impending genocide of their people. So it's very heavy stuff, and as you can tell from the fact that there's two queens in play in this book, like the political ramifications of this with the upper strata of the Omehi is very much discussed quite a bit over the course of this book. So like I said, it's much more political. In addition to that, like Evan went to just take a step back, and through the way that through the entire situation that Tao and the rest of the characters are thrown into, it kind of forces them to evolve and think on a larger scale than they had to in the previous book. In the previous book, they're pretty much just focused on their skills as warriors and progressing in that competition and the glory that could await them and that kind of thing. This year, they're kind of forced to really think about the world around them, the world, their actions, their ramifications, what they can do to change it, the responsibility that they have to themselves to act to correct what's being done and all of these things. So it's a lot of scheming, a lot of plotting, a lot of political machinations, a lot of back and forth. If that's your jam, then this is the book to really deliver it for you. It is quite a different pace and flow from the first book, but that's, like I said, that's not a bad thing. This book, not only is it still very much entertaining, and it's still seeded with quite a few action sequences that are just nuts. It does take the story in a direction that I think most fans want to see the story go in. But yeah, so that's kind of what's going on there. One thing that was really cool to see is that it's just the way the characters kind of developed over the course of this book. Like I said, it's a very different story because they're facing a very different challenge from what they did in the first book. So the characters have kind of forced to change as a result of that. Mainly Tao, especially Tao, I should say. He would like the whole reason he was he was so spectacular in the first book. It was because of how laser focused he was on that, and now he's in a situation where he has to completely shatter that laser focus essentially and start to think broader, think long term and these kind of things. It forces him to change, but at the same time he's still very much that person, and you can see it in the plan that he proposes and the way that he goes about executing it. So that's still that drive, that laser focus is still very much there. It's just channeled into something different, and it's diffused a bit as a result of the fact that it has to go in so many directions, you can say. So there's that, and I think in general, just the cast of characters in this book, like they were developed a bit more robustly than they were in the first book. Like the first book was all introduction, and you're in a war. How much do you learn about people, like their motivations, their dreams, and their personal lives, and that kind of thing? Given how the first book flowed, like it makes sense we didn't know them too in depth in that setting. Like, not to say that there wasn't character work, but this one, like, given the situation, given the type of story that it is right for there to be quite a bit more character exploration and depth on pretty much everyone who touches these pages, and that's exactly what we get. and we get some very fascinating insight along the way there. Um, it, it it not just shows us we get some fascinating insight in that it shows us that people as they are presented, even as they're presented on the page, aren't necessarily what they seem, even if they're nominally an ally in these situations. Like the entire thing is still ripe for there to be quite a bit of betrayal in these kind of things. Um, so there's that, and then there's just the whole situation surrounding the queen. Like, even though she has this splinter cell with her, these loyalists, like, things are very much in flux. Things are very much not stable, and it's just well done. Like the way that is that ties into the whole character development and all of that is just really well done. Um, and then of course there's the inevitable world expansion, because given that the situation that they face, the only way they can really go beyond the only way they can really surmount it, if they're even able to surmount it, is to delve into some of the more some of the more archaic things that we've seen in the story so far, namely with the magic and the lore, the world building, and that kind of thing. And that's kind of what we get along the way. Like, the world is expanded outward. We learn more about the magic system. We learn more about the role of dragons in this society, and how it plays out, how it ties into the history of not just the Omehi, but this entire conflict that's been raging for 200 years. Like, quite a bit. It all kind of blends seamlessly into and in between one another, because you can't learn about these things without learning about the other side of the conflict, and you can't learn about these people without learning about the history. And it's one thing just seamlessly leads to another, and it's well handled. Like, you do get the occasional info dumps, but the way they're handled, they happen at the time that they need to happen, and they happen in a way where they contribute to the story, which is exactly how they're supposed to be. You don't randomly just walk into a tavern and you have some random dwarf sitting there and he'll just give you his entire people's history just because why not. That kind of nonsense. You don't get that here. But yeah. So that's kind of like what this book essentially boils down to. It's a book with quite a bit of drama, quite a bit of political machinations. Of course, given how the first book was, to say there's quite a bit of fighting and quite a bit of war it goes without saying. Like, that's always going to be baked into this war, this series, just the way everything is set up. It's inevitable, and there's some passion. There's quite a bit of passion here as the characters reel from the consequences of their decisions and those surrounding them and all of that. Like, it's a heady stew essentially to be dealing with, and like, this book just goes to some dark places, and it leaves these characters scarred, if they even survive. You'll have to read and find out about that. Like, it was just a spectacularly engaging read from start to finish. A very different beast from the first one, but in a good way, in a really good way. Yeah, I think that's really all I have to say about the Fires of Vengeance. Like, for me, I consider it a really good follow-up to The Rage of Dragons, and I guess I'm now among the legions waiting for the third book. So, Everwinter, if by some miracle you see this, keep working, bro. Keep working. We're waiting. And yeah, that's all I have to say about the Fires of Vengeance. If you made it this far into the video, I don't think anyone ever does, but just in case you're some strange individual that made it to the end of one of my videos, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.